New on Curiosity Stream.
I'm James Burke. I'm going to take you on a journey through time.
James Burke's visionary series returns, reimagined for our time.
Now, this is all uncharted territory.
The Washington Post hails Burke as one of the most intriguing minds in the Western world. The New York Times raves he careens from one great moment in history to another.
Where do we want to go from here?
Experience all new connections.
So what's the next connection?
With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
My brother-in-law died suddenly, and now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. That's why I told my husband we could not put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month, a savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance.
For your free quote, go to SelectQuote.com. SelectQuote.com. That's SelectQuote.com.
SelectQuote. We shop. You save. Full details on example policies at SelectQuote.com/commercials.
Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Join us as we seek the truth and travel the long road to justice. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a second episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis today on Tuesday, October 19th. I'm Gigi Fruit Loop. I would ask you what's good, but it's all
long time no see.
Yeah, I know. It's been like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Real quick, shout out to our sponsor, Too Cool T-Shirt Quilts. Go to toocooltshirtquilts.com/Pretty Lies and Alibis. Get your Christmas gifts, y'all. So today has been 2 years since Tammy Daybell was murdered.
Wow, that's crazy.
Not a happy anniversary by no means, but we are thinking of her family, her friends, and her kids. And I was thinking about her kids just this weekend, going over all of this stuff because we learned so much about the inner workings of Lori and Chad as a couple, and then as a religious couple, or whatever you want to call them. Yep. And you have to wonder if every time these document dumps come out, is that something that they read and digest, or are they just still very much, he was framed? I would kind of imagine maybe they're going to say she put a spell on him.
Something, yeah. Yeah, I don't think they'll believe ever that he did what he did. Yep.
So, and then thank you to some of our listeners who clarified that Thor is not the Thor that we talked about last night, where Chad thanked Thor. It's not a Marvel character.
He don't have a big hammer.
It's not a prophet. It is a friend of Chad's. So
it seems like I remember reading that a long time ago.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm 700 pages into this stuff. Names are just like bonding together in my brain right now. So
yeah, it's been a while.
We try to own up when we screw up. So this is about Zulema's police interview, and she was interviewed by Detective Ray Hermosillo and Lieutenant Ron Ball, who both came into town from Rexburg to do this. They actually interviewed several people during their time there. We'll get to those later in the week. Now, Zulema had her attorney, Garrett Smith, with her. What's interesting, Garrett Smith is also the attorney for Melanie Gibb and Summer Shiflett, who is Lori's sister, and Lori's parents' attorney. So they all just sort of.
So do they have a shortage of attorneys?
Well, maybe, or this dude has got probably a new car with all those retainer fees with that group. Real? So the first question that they asked Zulema is, what do you think about this whole thing? And she said, Chad and Lori are master manipulators, and they're full of lies and deceit. And until you have experienced the web of lies and deceit, you can't fathom that they would be that evil. But now she realizes they had different motives, and they led you to believe one thing while they did another. She said she would never be the same after this, and she would always have trust issues because of them.
That's understandable.
Well, yeah, it is. But again, like we talked about on that Live Friday and last night's episode, it's really easy to say these things after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
So the first of the group she met was Melanie Gibb, and she met, there is a redacted name in here. We did not want to guess. She met this person at a church in 2018 where Zulema was asked to speak. After the speech, this unknown person approached Zulema and said she needed to get to know her better. And this person also said she was a gatherer and would host meetings at her home regarding preparation for the second coming. This person told Zulema she found someone who was very awake and she needed to meet her. And this person invited Zulema over to hear none other than Miss Lori Vallow speak.
Oh, wow.
Lori spoke about how she was a personal witness of Jesus Christ and she had been visited by Moroni, and he instructed her about her mission. And this was when their friendship began. I cannot imagine somebody telling me some cockadoodle story about some prophet that told her this was her mission and saying, let's be friends.
Yeah.
So after meeting Lori, Zulema attended one of those preparing a people conferences in St. George, Utah. And she went with both Melanie Gibb and Lori. And she said they spent a lot of time talking on the drive. And she said Lori was sweet and really kind, and that Lori would put you on a pedestal and give you a ton of praise. And again, you see that love bombing.
Yep.
Please like me. You're the greatest thing ever. Come join our cult.
She's bringing her into the fold.
That's it.
Yep. So she said she thought this was the first time Lori met Chad. Zulema had met Chad a couple of months prior at a conference in Mesa, Arizona. She didn't speak to him, but did buy a couple of his books. They first spoke at this St. George conference. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
She said she noticed that Lori and Chad hit it off instantly as if they'd known each other forever, and she thought it was weird. She said Lori was putting the moves on Chad and flirted with him. And we all know she was still married at the time. So Chad was accepting of the flirting and was flattered by it. She said they were giggling and laughing like kids. Lori told Chad not to worry, that she would sell all his books for him. Zulema said Lori was manipulative and good at talking with people, and she did help him sell books at this conference. I'm sorry for those people who
Nothing to say. I mean, really.
Who had to read those. On the way home from the conference, Lori drove. Lori asked Zulema to look up scriptures about the 144,000 people and James the Last. Lori later tells Zulema this is who her and Chad are. James is a nickname for Chad, and Helena is hers in that erotica story written by Chad. Or written by somebody else that Chad copied. Yeah. Zulema says when Lori told her this, she put two and two together and figured out Chad had Lori throughout the day at the conference, that they'd been together in prior probation. Zulema said Chad was reserved and calculated. Those are two good words. Calculated is a very good word.
And reserved, because sometimes the way these cult leaders, I don't even know if I consider him a cult leader. It was just kind of like a group after school club of misfits who believed really weird stuff.
It's the Breakfast Club gone wrong.
Right. Yeah. Let's do a sequel to that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not some sudden thing. It's a lot of grooming. It's a lot of love bombing. And then before you know it, you're so deep in that you can't see the forest for the trees. And that's just every person I've ever read that came out of a cult and was able to regain their own thoughts. They say the same thing, reserved, really subtle.
Yeah. So Chad was reserved and calculated. Lori was outgoing and in your face. She said Chad would give you little bits of information about the religious beliefs and would then go silent. And later he would give more religious information and go silent again. She said this was enough to pique your curiosity about the church's teachings and his belief system. It's like almost giving you a little bit to just pull you along. Right. It's like if you give them the whole ball, they'll be like, whoa.
Exactly.
Too overwhelming, but just feeding a little bit at a time.
Yep.
Lori eventually would act the same way with providing information, then going silent. She said this was their way to pique your curiosity to want to learn more. So after the St. George conference, there was another one in Arizona. This was November 16, 2018. She said prior to this, Lori had been ghosting her and not answering her texts or calls. She learned that during this time, Lori and Melanie Gibb were attached at the hip. Zulema didn't sit with, and again, redacted, and Lori at this conference.
So during the intermission of this conference, Zulema spoke with Chad because she had some questions. And during this time, Lori approached Zulema and said Charles had taken JJ out of town, and Lori was able to have people from the conference over to spend the night, including Chad, and she invited her. So Chad also invited Zulema and told her he would give her a blessing, and that's the first night that she met Alex.
If you remember, that's the picture.
Yep, with the cookies.
Yep.
Yeah, the same cookies that she made for Chad's kids right after their mother was murdered by their dad.
Yep.
Ugh. So Lori secretly invited Zulema into a bedroom, and this is when Chad gave Zulema her first blessing. And she said this was the moment that the web started getting weaved with her being brought into this. And so investigators asked about the difference from this blessing compared to others she had gotten through the years. And she said she always had a vision and she had dreams from the time she was a child. And as a kid, she didn't really understand these visions. But as she got older, she realized the dreams were warnings and things that were going to happen in the future. And she said this is why she was so interested in Chad, because he had visions and dreams as well. So she said, you know, I think about the Stevie Nicks song, I keep my visions to myself. She said during Chad's blessing to her, she had a vision while wide awake where she saw the entire Phoenix Valley deserted with abandoned buildings, and overgrown vegetation. And she saw a white building, which appeared to her to be a temple. And after the blessing, Zulema told Chad about the white building. And Lori, of course, I saw the same thing. I had the same vision.
Oh, wow.
So later that evening, they were all in Lori's living room, and Zulema, the redacted name Serena, who we will hear her testimony later, and Lori all sat on the couch, and Chad sat on the coffee table to give instruction to them. And he told them he had information on translation, and Lori asked Chad to teach the group about translation. He said translation was 3 different steps. You had physical, emotional, and spiritual. Then he gave a scoring system for this transformation, and so he said he could tell how people were progressing. Oh my God. You're doing good. I feel your vibrations.
Yeah, it's like Chad is here and Lori asks the questions and kind of keeps everything moving along.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Already working in tandem this early on. Like, hey, Chad, I'm going to throw it to you. Enlighten us, please.
Exactly.
Gasoline fire. I'll always say that.
Yeah. Yeah. So he said he also had a place in his house that was a portal of information for him. He would go to the portal and get revelations and information because he was closely working with spiritual beings to usher in the second coming of Christ. Zulema believed Chad because of how he presented this information, saying he was soft-spoken and humble. This is why you got to be careful who you're talking to.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, yeah. Zulema said Chad told her she was an advanced person and had amazing gifts that were given to her for a reason. He said she had a mission to complete and would be a part of the work of the Lord. Chad gave his phone number to Zulema and others, saying they could text him with any questions, but he may not be able to answer right away because he couldn't have conversations with women all day long. Lori gonna get mad. She got mad at that other girl.
He's such a prophet, but
yeah, you can text me, but I can't talk to you all day.
Can't make the wife mad.
Yeah, Zulema said she occasionally texts Chad, but tried to be respectful to Tammy. So obviously Zulema knew about Tammy.
Yeah.
Zulema would continue to call and text Lori, but she never responded back. One day, Lori called and said it had been too long since they'd seen each other and they should meet for lunch. Zulema said Melanie Gibb was with Lori, and this is when Lori and Redacted told her Charles was a zombie. Zulema said this was about a month or 2 after the conference in Mesa, after New Year, so around mid-January.
Mm-hmm.
Zulema also said she couldn't confirm who said Charles was a zombie, but Redacted confirmed that Chad gave Lori the information that Charles had died and his body had become a zombie. That's convenient, right?
Right, yeah.
Like, I'm in love with your wife. Oh, you're a zombie.
Yeah, exactly. And then we got the zombie out, but another one came right in.
Exactly. They just keep coming. Zulema noted Lori used the verbiage "I've been told" when explaining that Charles had become a zombie, which had 3 names: Garrett, Ned, and Iplos. Mm-hmm. So Lori explained that Charles was going to pass away, and a minute or two after death is when an entity could take over the body, and that's what happened to Charles, whose body was taken over by Ned. When I hear that name, I always think of Bill and Ted's Great Adventure. I don't know why, but because it ain't even Ned.
Well, in the beginning, they also called it Ted.
See, okay.
A couple of times, it was in last night's episode. Somebody called him Ted.
I bet they watched it too. She said Lori was convinced this was true. Lori said Charles seemed shorter than he was, and she said she had sex twice with Charles after his body was taken over, so she actually had sex with a zombie.
Oh my gosh,
she
dude.
Is loco.
Yeah. So Zulema said she wasn't sure what to make of the zombie talk, and at the time she really couldn't discount it. She said she didn't understand a lot of things, but she would kind of put it on a shelf and get more information and make a decision later whether or not she believed the zombie talk. A couple of weeks later, Zulema said that Lori called her to come over and meet with Serena and Melanie Gibb. And while there, Alex stopped by and told a couple of jokes and then got up and left. And it just reminded me of like, thank you very much. Don't forget to tip your waitress. Couple of jokes, I'm out.
I'll be here all night. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he used to go to those comedy clubs, and do all that. Yeah. I mean, Alex could do voices. We've seen some of the videos of him. He was talented. If only he had taken what was good in him and focused on that and not fake religions, maybe we wouldn't be here.
Yep.
But after Alex left, Lori told them to be careful what they said to Alex because he was only a first creation and didn't understand much. And it was kind of like giving doctrine information to a kindergartner. And, that kind of spoke volumes to me in that they've always sort of been inseparable at different times in their life. I don't know that they were super inseparable until all this stuff. I think they did have periods where she was married to Joe Ryan. Alex worked. I keep wanting to say Alec because we just did Murdoch. But, you think about it here, she's essentially insulting him, saying it's like giving doctrine to a kindergartner. And yet you see how she treats Alex, which is you're the best, you're my protector. But, insulting him is just a little thing I noticed. So Lori and Chad told Zulema she was a multiple creation. And this was her 4th or 5th time on Earth. And the multiple creation theory was taught by Lori and Chad. If you were from multiple creations, you were exalted from another creation. And there are multiple creations, and this current creation has 5 worlds.
It's like Super Mario.
Yeah, right. I know, right? Maybe it's like deja vu. You know how you get deja vu, and it's like maybe it's in another creation.
Yeah.
So you've got to come a total of 9 times during this creation, and Earth was the lowest and most wicked to be at. So Zulema was told she was exalted in the 4th world, and she didn't have to come to this world, but she did to help Lori and Chad. Everybody's here to serve them, if you notice.
Oh, I know, right?
Yeah. So when asked how Charles moved on from being a zombie, she said she wasn't sure, but she thought around March 2019 when Lori and this redacted person told her about taking Charles's truck and clothes when he was out of town on business. But we know from the documents that Chad first searched for this Ned Schneider at the end of January, and the same day is when Lori texted Charles and said, "We're done."
Yeah.
So all this started at the end of January.
Yep.
So Zulema said she commented, if it was this bad, why not just get a divorce? But Lori said she had been guided and told this is what needed to be done. She didn't say by Jesus or Moroni, so we know who guided her.
Oh, yeah. So you don't get that money.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. I mean, it does kind of come back to the money as well. I said last night, I think a lot of this is religious based, but at the same time, with Charles, just divorcing him would not have afforded her that life insurance policy. So it's a healthy mix with him.
Yeah.
So Zulema assumed the revelation was from Chad, but she didn't have first knowledge, only that Lori would say, "I've been told." So when Lori was in Hawaii and Tylee stayed with Alex, Lori called Zulema and wanted all of the women to meet in a safe and secluded area. So Zulema offered her house up And then when Lori got back, they all got together. And this was in March. So the people that were there was Serena, Melanie Gibb, Lori, Christina, and Nicole. Christina and Nicole and Serena were the three that kind of left early, just to remind you guys, because it's easy to kind of hate everybody who ever touched this stuff. But as soon as they started hearing all this crazy stuff, they were gone.
Yeah. So they said that Lori talked on the phone to Chad the entire time, right?
Yeah. So during this meeting, she was constantly on the phone with Chad.
Mm-hmm. So during this time, Lori told the group she had been told how to cast out the demon inside of Charles, and it was by having group prayer. They all began to pray to cast out the demon, and afterwards, Chad called Lori, and Chad told her it had worked, and the entity was gone. A couple of days later, Chad told Lori that when the demon exited, another one entered his body. That's convenient, right?
I was just about to say, that's very convenient. That's suspicious.
So Zulema felt Chad and Lori were only giving little bits of information at a time to groom them and keep them interested. And I know, looking back on it, I mean, you can see all this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we do.
Mm-hmm.
So while the group was at Zulema's, Lori taught them about multiple creations, the different levels of these creations, and signing contracts with the devil or Christ. She also talked to them about being translated and increasing your vibrations. Lori told them Chad could read their vibrations.
Yeah, I bet he could.
Yeah, with his little pendulum thing, whatever. So she said her vibrations were so high that she didn't come from Hawaii to Arizona by plane, but she traveled by her portal, saying she could do this because she was a translated being. Zulema said she saw Lori's airline ticket, so she was skeptical.
Dude, I laughed so hard when I read this.
Are you serious?
Oh my goodness.
I came by portal, Delta. Delta was the portal. Oh man.
Connected in LA at the LA portal.
In the LA portal, LAX. So I have been through LAX, and there are some crazy people out there.
I love LA. I'm dying to go back.
I liked it, but we had this cab driver tell us to stay away from green light, that it was aliens or something. It was pretty weird.
Wow. Yeah. He was hitting the pot shops before he picked you guys up.
Yeah. And then he started telling, he was falling asleep.
Oh, yeah. He hit the pot shop. He was chill.
Yeah. He was falling asleep, and my aunt who was with me, she would say, "Quit talking to him." And I'm like, "I'm trying to keep him awake." He's like merging into another lane. Yeah. So anyways, if you go to LA, stay away from the green light. Anyways, maybe he was part of Chad's people. So Lori told him they were all related to Lori and Chad during previous creations. She said Lori and Chad were always at the top, and Chad was always higher than everybody. Of course. Lori said Chad was brothers with Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ in another creation, and in another, Chad was the Holy Ghost.
My brother-in-law died suddenly, and now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. That's why I told my husband we could not put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month, a savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance.
For your free quote, go to SelectQuote.com. SelectQuote.com. That's SelectQuote.com.
SelectQuote. We shop, you save. Full details on example policies at SelectQuote.com/commercials.
Okay, I just went Leap of Faith with Steve Martin on that.
Oh my gosh. I need to watch that. I had not thought of that movie in years. That is so funny.
Yeah, I just went there with Chad. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We should host a watch party on our Facebook and watch Leap of Faith.
I know, right?
Yep.
In this current creation, Chad was only here to gather the 144,000, but the Church of the Firstborn together. In the police interview, Zulema talked about zombies and the entity that possessed Charles. Zulema said she was aware that Lori moved to Texas with Charles after going to Hawaii. She said she asked Lori if she knew Charles was a zombie, and she was able to separate from him. Why go back? That's a good question.
It really is. It sounds like maybe Zulema had a little bit of common sense if she truly asked her this stuff, or if in the year that this stuff hit the fan in mainstream media, she's trying to save face. I don't know which one it is.
Yeah. She said Lori told her that she had been told she needed to go back for a little while to put her finances in order.
Boom.
Yeah, her finances.
There we go. That's why.
Yep. Zulema also knew Lori had taken $20,000 from the account before she went to Hawaii, and we know it was actually $35,000.
Yeah, she wiped him out. He wasn't even going to be able to make his payroll.
Which affects a bunch of other people.
Not only that, but, then he's still saying, I'll pay your rent. Because he cared for JJ and Lori.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So Zulema said when Lori was in Texas, Lori was still asking for help to cast out the new demon. And she said Lori had a specific way she wanted to do this, which was using all of the elements of the earth in conjunction with the blessing. So they made sure no demon came into him again. So I was kind of thinking about this, and I thought maybe for a split second, if she's in Texas with Charles, it's really harder to hate somebody when you're with them and they're being kind to you. So I kind of wondered if maybe for a half a second, she isn't reaching out, trying to figure out how he doesn't have to die. But ultimately the money came in, and I'm sure that went out of her head if she had a decent bone in her body at that point. Yeah. So eventually Lori moves back to Arizona, and she moves in with Alex. And Zulema remembers going to Alex's and meeting with Lori. And Lori told her she had been given a mission to eradicate all earthbound spirits that had not crossed, who were dark. So Lori, we talked about this last night, she showed Zulema a map of the U.S. and the world to show her which locations were already done. So Charles,
it's like one of those maps you can get to like erase. It shows where you've been. Yeah, yeah.
No zombies, zombie-free zone.
No zombies here.
I know. And here's the thing, I wear band shirts every time we do an episode, and I'm gonna have to wear my Thriller shirt for a different subject and a different case, because I about put it on today, and I thought, man, I just can't wear a zombie shirt.
Yeah.
When I'm talking about this case.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she said around this time, Charles rented the house in Arizona for Lori, and Zulema went by there. This is the first time she had met JJ and Tylee, which was before Charles was murdered. Couldn't have been too long. They were only there a few weeks. So she said around this time, Alex was no longer a first creation, which is the first time on earth. He's now a multiple creation who had been exalted. He is married to a girl named Holly, who is already exalted. That confused me. I guess maybe in La La Land, he has a wife named Holly, but he's only here to help on earth, and his sole purpose was to be Lori's defender and protector. And of course, he was told this by Lori and Chad. Fruit Loop, you're on this earth to be my defender and my protector only. Do you buy that? No. Once being exalted, Zulema says, if you were exalted, you weren't here for probationary purposes. You were only on loan to help out, because you weren't here on probation. You weren't tried for anything you did on earth. So Lori said she was already exalted and would slam her hand on the counter really loud and say, doesn't count for me. Well, aren't you just fancy?
She's the queen.
She is the queen of exalted
people.
So Lori would tell everybody who had the exalted status they wouldn't be judged for their actions, because nothing counted for them while they were here on earth. So going back to Charles, Lori arranged another meeting at Zulema's and asked the girls to fast before coming over to pray the entity out of Charles's body this time. After the prayer, Chad contacted Lori just like last time and said, guess what? Ned's gone. We got Hiplos. He's here.
Hiplos is back.
Hiplos is a bad boy.
He's on the scene. So Zulema says they worked on Hiplos many times, and she was told that Hiplos was an expert and had occupied other bodies many times. She was told that Hiplos was one of the highest levels of dark spirits, and he has done this for generations. He was so powerful that they didn't know how to get rid of him. So a couple of weeks later, Charles was murdered. Lori said they needed to use the elements of water, fire, lightning, etc. to get rid of Iplos. She said she had been told to try new things to get rid of Iplos, and she said it was hard and complicated. Lori laughed and said maybe she needed to put a bunch of medication in his water.
Which we know she did when she was back in Texas. That came out in these documents. One person called authorities back after her interview, and she had told them initially she was putting something in his drinks. And then she talked to one of the other girls who confirmed it was Xanax. And she would put 2 in there at a time in his protein shakes because she thought more than 2 would be obvious. And the reason she did this is essentially because Charles was breathing down her neck about her beliefs and everything else.
Crazy. She said leading up to Charles's murder that her and Alex were just friends. She had been at some of the attempts to get rid of Ned, but they were becoming better friends during this time, and they didn't start talking on the phone until after Charles's murder, not getting his number until sometime in July. So is that talking about Chad?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was zoned out. I was totally on a beach in Mexico.
Okay, I read that, and I'm like, wait, Alex is her brother. Like,
so
she's talking about Chad.
Alex. She's talking about Alex, that she had been around him casually, but at this point.
Oh, that's Zulema. I'm thinking Lori said that. Oh, brain.
I'm sorry.
cloud.
I should have put Zulema. I put she.
No, it's okay. It's totally me.
I was about 10 hours into it with this. So.
It's totally me. So Zulema found out about Charles's murder.
Yeah, that was on July 12th when Alex and Lori called asking if she would come over to Lori's. And so when she arrived, Alex opened the door and gave her a hug and invited her in, saying Lori was in the backyard. And so Zulema goes back there and she's laying in a pool chair the day after Charles is murdered. No cares. And she said Lori was very quiet. And that's when she told her Alex had shot Charles yesterday. And at this point, this is where I think Zulema should have went to the cops. Fruit Loop had to get up for a second. She told her that Charles came to pick up JJ and she started going through his phone. Charles got mad and that's when the argument started. Alex came out to intervene. Tylee came out with the bat. Charles took the bat from Tylee and Alex restrained him. And during this time, Charles hit Alex with the bat. So Alex went and got his gun and told Charles to stop. According to Lori, he didn't and Alex shot him. Lori said it was impossible for Charles to have this much strength, but Alex held him and Charles flipped him around like a pancake. That was her words, like a pancake. And Alex said he couldn't have done this to him if he were Charles. So Lori said there were 10,000 dark entities that came to assist Charles, and he had supernatural strength during this. They say struggle. I think he was ambushed. And Zulema asked Alex how he was after shooting Charles, and he said he was okay because it wasn't Charles that he shot and killed. It was a zombie. And my point is, if they felt like Charles was a zombie, like they said, why didn't they tell cops that day in the police station that they killed a zombie with 10,000 dark entities instead of a human being? Because they know it's hogwash.
Yeah.
So Detective Hermosillo asked Zulema about a string of texts where her and Lori on June the 2nd of 2019. This is that string where they're putting this fire energy toward Iplos while Charles was driving in Texas. And she said that Lori had told her that Chad said Charles was driving his truck on a trip, and during this trip, he would have a car accident and die. That his body needed to be put in a unusable state so another spirit could not enter his body. If fire and energy were put around his body, that would prevent another entity from entering. So Zulema clarified that Charles no longer existed and his spirit was removed from his body and replaced by Garrett, Ned, and now Iplos.
See, I think that's going to come into play when you talk about JJ and Tylee, how they were disposed of.
I think so too.
I think that whole thing is going to come into play. There's a reason why they were that they did them that way.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
So in a text from July 8th, which Detective Hermosillo read, Lori asked Zulema to call up an earthquake in Valencia, California, because Charles was traveling there. Lori said, sadly, Iplos was okay, and they would continue to work on him. So Zulema said Chad told her she was put on Earth to control the elements. And Chad instructed her to practice controlling certain things in regards to the elements. She would pray, and Chad and Lori would tell her how successful she was afterwards. And Zulema said Lori would tell her about her capabilities to control the elements. So they told her she could call up rainstorms and was able to part rainstorms. So Zulema said she would say a prayer and ask for these things to happen. And then Lori and Chad would validate her abilities and her success.
So I just went Mary Poppins on that one. I don't know. Little umbrella.
By the way, I
dancing in the
just got
rain.
an email that has the audio file of when Chad called the crematorium the day Charles was murdered.
Oh,
He
yeah.
pretended to be a grieving person who had just lost their uncle. I have to run and get my kids when we do this. As soon as I get back, I'm going to put that across our social media.
Yeah. So in a text on July 11th, this is the day Charles murdered, Zulema sent Lori a text saying she was working on Iplos that day and he would be taken as he is. And this text was actually sent at night after Charles was dead.
Mhm.
So in Zulema's eyes, Charles was already dead and she was trying to get rid of a zombie. She said ever since the conference in St. George, the date of July 11th was a big sign for Lori and Melanie Gibb. Zulema said they always talked about this date and she thought this would be the day God would take him.
That's kind of big.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's just, I don't know if it was a coincidence that Charles came in town on the 10th and was murdered on the 11th, but
yeah.
just weird.
Yeah. So Hermosillo, right? Hermosillo.
I think it's Hermosillo, but you know how we are with names, y'all.
Y'all know how we are.
Sorry, detective, if we're butchering your name.
I'm sorry. Yep. It says the day they put fire around Charles as he drove, that JJ was with him. He asked her what would happen to JJ if he were with Charles when the fire was surrounding him. And Zulema said, Loro.
I think I might have. Yeah, I probably
like
did a typo
loco.
there. Sorry.
Look, I can't see anyways. My glasses.
Lori, yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm getting to that point where my arms aren't long enough.
Well, I get to that point 10 hours in where my fingertips are numb. So
yeah. So Lori told her that JJ wouldn't be living for a very long time and he would pass on soon because he had another mission to complete. Lori assumed he would die in this accident too.
That's
awful.
At what point? This is another point where if I'm Zulema, I'm saying, whoa, that zombie was just murdered. And you're telling me now your 7-year-old son is going to die soon?
Yeah. So Lori started telling Zulema between March and July that JJ would pass away. Zulema never heard Lori refer to JJ by any other name or call him a zombie, but after Charles was murdered, she started calling Tylee Hillary.
Yeah, so you see,
yep,
got Charles out of the way, and now her focus became the kids.
Yep.
Oh, evil woman.
Yep.
Sorry, that came out.
Oh, yeah. So Zulema said she was unaware of a plan to specifically kill Charles. She thinks Chad and Lori convinced Alex that Charles was a zombie and that's what he was killing, doing them a favor. And then you think, okay, well, you were pretending to rain down fire on him.
Right. Yeah. As if you trying to do your Harry Potter abilities with your brain isn't theoretically just as bad. You're intending to kill this man.
Yeah.
And a son and a 7-year-old boy.
Yeah. So she said when someone died, their spirit left their body, but if the body was possessed by a dark entity, the original spirit was in limbo until the dark spirit left. When asked if the original spirit could re-enter the body, she says this was never explained as an option to her. She didn't know if the body had to die or not. She reiterated that Lori told her Charles had already passed away when Garrett moved into his body. I think it's funny that their attorney's Garrett Smith.
I know, right?
This is
a little coincidence.
I know, right? So she said Chad did tell her that there was a group that would go around and force spirits out of people's bodies. She was asked about a message she sent to Julie, redacted, about Charles's death being a Nephi and Laban ending. And she said when she went to Lori's house the day after Charles was murdered, Alex and Lori made it sound like Heavenly Father gave Charles to them and brought him there for an opportunity to kill him.
So Lori told her a few times if something happened to Charles, she would get $1 million from his life insurance policy, hence the getting her finances in order.
Yep.
When Lori found out she wasn't the beneficiary, she said she tried to just act chill and not show a lot of emotion, but she said it was really obvious Lori was upset. And she said that Lori would say that she was on a mission from God and everything would be okay. So after the murder, Zulema went to Chile, and a couple of weeks after she returned, which would have put it at the end of July, Lori had a meeting at her house in Chandler. Chad was there, and Zulema said this was the first time she ever saw the two of them becoming romantic. And at this meeting, the talk of people moving to Rexburg started. And at this point in the interview, Zulema talks in depth about Lori and Chad's belief system and what she knew about JJ and Tylee. This was not included word for word in the report. They just said this is what was talked about.
Yeah.
So when talking about these things, Zulema said Lori and Chad would instruct you to do something. And if you doubted it, Chad would give you a blessing and basically say God was asking the same of you. And Zulema said this was definitely his way of manipulating.
Yeah, you're not listening to me. Okay, listen to God. This is what he said. Yeah.
So one of these requests was for Zulema to move to Rexburg, and she did not want to because her family was all in Arizona. But she was told whoever received the gospel and their teachings would be in a good place. And those who did not, there was no time or room for them. And I'm sure Zulema probably thought, yeah, I'm going to be a zombie after this. And we all know what happens to zombies.
Yeah.
So Zulema was interviewed again on October 22nd and the 23rd of 2020. And this was right after Tammy Daybell's murder. Or no, I'm sorry. This was a year after. Oh, okay. Hang on. I'm sorry. This confused me. I think maybe this is a typo. It says 2019 in the report. I think it's 2020 because none of them were being brought in at this time right after Tammy died or was murdered. 2 years ago today. This was conducted by Fremont County at the Chandler Police Department, and it's not included in this report. But Zulema gave detailed accounts of how castings were given through prayer and also detailed information about vibrations and multiple creations. She was contacted again March 17th of this year, and Zulema said after Charles was murdered, she was invited over to Lori's and told of the shooting, which we just talked about. And Zulema asked again, they just reiterated with her about what we just talked about, which is Chad said he was okay taking Charles's life because he was a zombie. Mm-hmm. And investigators really wanted to clarify whether Lori was present when Alex said that. And she said, yes, that Lori was there and they were by the pool. So when asked if Lori made any objections to this statement by Alex, Zulema said she did not. So that's all we've got for Zulema so far. I don't know if there's anything else deeper down.
Okay, I will say this. In watching the video, she talks about, and I don't know the date, but it's her and Alex together. They stopped because he was going to give her a massage.
Oh, yeah.
Like with oils. And he wanted to buy plastic to put on the bed to keep it from getting oily or whatever. And that she felt groggy. It was like she couldn't wake up. Mm-hmm. Dude, I think she was next.
That's what she said. She wondered if she was next when that happened. Yep. But she did go on to say that she slept super hard. She was probably drugged. But for some reason, maybe
he couldn't do it.
Obviously, they changed their mind if that was their intention. Yeah. So we're just getting a lot of insight into their thought patterns.
Yep.
And it's crazy, y'all. This is it. I said it last night. These people, I'll say Joe Ryan, Charles, Tylee, JJ, Tammy, they had so many things working against them. Mm-hmm. And especially with kids, because they're just dependent on the adult to take care of them and keep them safe. But I don't think we've seen the half of it still. Whatever Idaho has, we will find out during Chad's trial. And I do think he will go before her. Yeah. And then after hers, maybe we'll get a document dump. But this stuff's really incriminating. So I can't imagine what they have to be able to have gotten the murder charges.
Yeah. But I will say, some of you asked, have you seen where Zulema put a ring or something under her leg? She does take something. If you look at the beginning of the video, she takes something off her finger and puts it under her leg.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's a ring. Is she remarried? Has she married?
I don't
She
know.
want
I
anybody to
don't know. I haven't
I don't know
heard.
either.
I'll search the records in Arizona.
Yeah,
find out.
Some of you guys were asking about it, and
Or
I
could
don't
it be
know.
the ring that like Alex gave her and she still wears it?
Could be. I don't know. Somebody said, "Is it the malachite ring?" I
Mm.
don't know.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I have not noticed
Yeah.
that, but
Yep.
I've really been reading more. I haven't watched the videos
Yeah.
yet.
Yep. So,
But well, that's all we have for you guys. That's so far in these documents. That's what she told investigators. Now, later on, towards the end of these documents, there are a ton of text messages between Lori and Zulema. We'll break those down, but this stuff's going to take us a couple of weeks to go through.
it sounds a little like she's jealous of Melanie Gibb too.
I think they were all jealous of each other in some way or
Mhm.
another.
Yeah.
Like when the girl was calling Chad too much, she became a dark spirit to Lori.
Yep.
So they all had their own, maybe wanting to be the biggest witch or wizard in this or whatever they call themselves. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
here we are.
Yep.
All right, guys, you have a good evening. We will see you tomorrow where we will pick this up with some more police interviews.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.